All right, we are live. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearmsradio.tv. Before we get into the show, I'd like to mention our newest sponsor, 2A Buyers Group. It's a membership site that offers members wholesale and dealer pricing on firearms and firearms-related products. Visit 2abuyersgroup.com for more information. And tonight we are going to be discussing the Virginia Pro Gun Rally. From last week, it was the largest pro gun rally in history. If you guys can correct me on that, but I believe that to be true. Had quite a few more people than the rallies that we've had up here in Santa Fe over the past couple of years. Tim, Chris, or Brad, do you guys know about how many people showed up to that rally?
I saw.
If you in MSM, they're going to tell you 22,000. Personally, I can promise you it was 70,000 plus. So
I saw a guy post a formula.
A lot of people.
A guy posted a formula. He's a crowd estimator, something, whatever, party goer. He said you figure 4.5 square feet per loosely packed person, 2.5 square feet for densely packed people. He then took multiple overhead pictures approximately the same time, measured the area, and for a loosely packed 4.5 square foot crowd at the point in time when he had the pictures, it was 75,000 people figured.
That's pretty impressive.
I think that would be very accurate.
Yep. Because as Chris just said, you had to post pictures. There were even helicopters up on Overwatch, and none of them had a full look at all the side streets and down streets and cross streets at the Capitol, and they were too deep in almost every direction. Chris did a lot of walking around there.
All of you are probably familiar with the fact that he declared, the Governor Ralph Northam declared a state of emergency and installed a bunch of fencing around the Capitol grounds where he outlawed guns. And the design of that fencing was designed to disperse the crowd. So one half of the Capitol grounds nobody could get to. So that fencing was designed to make it appear that the crowd was less than it actually was, just by showing large open areas. But if you look back at the streets surrounding it, I mean, they were packed shoulder to shoulder with people.
Yep.
That's awesome. How many recorded acts of violence or outbreaks were there?
None.
0.
There's one person that was arrested. Rumor has it, and I want to make sure that's understood. It's a rumor that person was an Antifa person with the full face mask. It was very cold that day. It was like 24 degrees early in the morning and good wind. Those buildings act kind of like a wind tunnel. And a lot of people had face masks on, but not a full face mask. And she put a full face mask on. The police asked her 3 times to remove it, and she refused, and they finally arrested her on a Class 5 felony. So she was just being a hardhead and wanting to be arrested. The rally itself and the police included, I've never, ever been in a situation you couldn't pass somebody without them giving you a fist bump or a high five or shaking your hand or, just saying, hey, what's up, man, or anything. It was just the general atmosphere of that crowd was outstanding. And that police, same thing. If you walk by them, everybody was, saying, hey, man, thanks, whatever. I mean, everybody was just being extremely level-headed, very reserved, no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, the only thing that was assaulted was the trash afterwards when we all cleaned it up, picked up the stickers.
That's right.
That's it.
All this is fact. When we came walking up, I drove up with 2 other guys, and we could see our first cops off in the distance. And I told the guys, I said, okay, listen up. You guys can laugh later or whatever, but today we're going to schmooze the police and just work with me when we get up there because we're going to be nice to these guys. And they were totally on board. We got up, we passed our first 3 cops. I looked at them and I said, hey, thank you guys for what you're doing. I want to thank you for being out here, and God bless you. Just stay safe. And they gave thumbs up. They waved. They said, no, thank you guys for being here. And pretty much every police officer I passed, we did the same thing. One of the people in my personal group, I was with a larger group, but at least one of the people in my personal 3 group always had something positive to say to police, and they always 100% said something positive back. And at the end, we had a group of police officers approach us, shaking our hands, telling us, thank you guys for coming. We had not had any rapport or anything with them prior to. The police were outstanding at this event, and so was the rest of the crowd.
Yep. And to use the incorrect term, gun violence, no guns committed any crimes.
That's good to hear. I'd imagine there were, with the over 75,000 people in attendance, there were quite a few firearms there.
Oh, the other thing too is that I'm sure both Brad and Chris will attest to is that a large portion of the crowd were slung with rifles, and the muzzle discipline was amazing. Everyone kept the muzzles correct. I was expecting to maybe hear a story of someone sweeping somebody or parking lot shenanigans. None of that. Everyone was very responsible. And as Chris and Brad have both said, everyone was super terrific, super nice. And I know that Chris probably could speak to this too, is that there were teams ready to clean up trash and whatnot, but every little group seemed to have little patrols going on just to help out everyone else. They had medical teams ready. These are unofficial people, just people who had medical training that had designated someone in their group to be a medic. It was such a community. And, Brad lives in Virginia, but I live in Tennessee and Chris lives in Texas. We knew that what was going on in Virginia was so incredibly important to the Republic that we wanted to stand with the people of Virginia.
For the listeners that maybe were sleeping under a rock last week, Tim, can you talk to us a little bit about the events that led up to the Virginia Pro-Gun Rally and kind of the red line in the sand that was drawn?
You know what? Can I punt to Brad since he lives there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. What that traditionally is, Martin Luther King holiday, which is also Stonewall Jackson King Day, is the traditional lobby day. They have that established because most people are off work. Anybody with any issue, that's their day to go lobby. And that really was an unfortunate part of this is, if you wanted to protect green tree frogs, that was your day to do it. It got overridden by the gun issues. To me personally, it was constitutional issues. We've got a lot more problems than just all these gun laws that they have came out with, even though they are front and center and they're tragic. The Democrats, when they took majority in November, they have exposed their entire playbook. And the VCDL, Virginia Citizen Defense League, always goes up there and lobbies for gun rights. The Gun Owners Forum does the same thing. Gun Owners of America. They put out the call, hey, we need, some help for people to come up here and lobby, and it exploded and turned into what we saw on Monday. Thankfully, everybody had the right attitude, wanted to go up there and prove gun owners weren't the problem. They didn't need the laws that they're proposing. And that really was my biggest fear was all of you remember Charlottesville and the tragedy that occurred there. My personal feeling is the government, was wanting that to kind of occur again because it makes their case. I had heard rumors prior to the event that they weren't going to deal with any gun laws until January 22nd, hoping that on the 20th, something was going to happen where they could, kind of make their case for the gun laws. And thankfully, none of that happened. But being the traditional lobby day, that was the primer that led to this meeting and rally and everything else.
Now, Brad, one of the things that I think that people from afar were really concerned about, of course, was the overreach of tyranny, but by the governor in the words, but that the legislature was going to throw up a whole bunch of bills and see which one stuck. But you're familiar, being from Virginia, what some of these laws they're proposing are, and have passed out of committee already.
The process is, we have a SB bill, which is a Senate bill, S is in Sam B, and then a House bill, which is an HB bill. Each chamber proposes new laws, votes on them, they go through committees, everything else. Then on February 12th, we have a crossover day. So any House bills that passed through committee and through the chamber cross over to Senate. Any Senate bills that passed through the committee and through the chamber cross over to the House. Then the opposite chamber will vote. They'll run through committee. They'll clean them up, add to them, whatever they want to do, vote on them. If they survive that process, then they will go to a combined committee of both chambers. They'll combine them, dress them up, take anything out, add anything to it. Then it will go to the governor and become a law. So it's a long process. Right now, they're all just bad ideals. But the red flag law did pass through. That's SB 240. That was a Senate bill. It passed the committee. They made a couple of changes to it that made it a little bit better, but it's still a bad ideal. The Senate automatic weapons bill, which was SB 16, really an egregious bill. It included everything. Threaded barrels, pistol grips, thumbhole stocks, anything over a 10-round clip. And the way they were worded were so vague that, just an example, it wasn't if the gun had a 10-round clip, if the gun was capable of holding a 10-round clip. And that's a big distinguishing factor. So that got dropped in the Senate, but the House has a version that's even worse, which is HB 961, I believe the number is, includes even more restrictions. That passed the House and will be coming to the Senate. I did have a Democrat senator tell me that it won't pass, but we'll have to see. I'm not going to hold my breath on it. So many other bills. I mean, I want to say when they initially began the session, there were 38 different gun-related bills. One of them, you can't teach your children to shoot a gun. You can't teach anybody to shoot a gun. It's a Class 5 felony for you to instruct anyone in how to operate a firearm. So, I mean, it's really extreme. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where the Democrats have opened their playbook. If there's a bright side to this situation, that's it. When they took over the House, the governor's mansion, and the Senate, they got power drunk, and now they've said, here's what we want for the entire nation. And that's honestly why we have started all these Facebook pages in every state, is to try to get ahead of it. Virginia, we're playing catch up. We're trying to, these laws are going to pass, and there's no reason they won't. They control all three. They call it trifecta. All three chambers of the government they have control of. So there's nothing to stop them from passing. So the next best step is to keep them from passing in another state, and see what's coming, try to head it off, hopefully prevent it from happening. But if not, be in a position to get ready, get everybody lined up and, ready to stop them.
If I could interject real quick, just one of the other bills, I'm not sure if it's a House or Senate bill that they've pre-filed, is super fascist in regards to they're trying to shut down any privately owned shooting range. They only want government owned shooting ranges so they have control. And that's insanity.
Yeah, basically.
that law, they and again, every one of these laws is bad, but the real problems arise from the vagueness of how it's written. And that law you're speaking about says it has to be a government-owned shooting range if there are less than a certain number, and I believe it was 40 in the facility. But a lot of shooting ranges are in complexes where they, maybe a strip shop where there are more than 40 people total in that facility, even though only 5 or 6 may be employed by the gun range. They said they must be government owned, and then in the same breath said that you cannot carry a gun into a government owned building. It was I couldn't believe it. I read it 2 or 3 times to make sure I was reading it correctly. And it is truly extreme.
They took Mayor Big Gulp's wish list of anti-guns. That's Bloomberg for anyone who doesn't know Mayor Big Gulp.
Yeah.
Wish list and threw every single one at the wall. There are ammo bans, magazine bans, red flag laws, semi-auto bans, 1 gun a month reinstated. They threw it all at the wall. Everything that you could happen. I think only Hawaii has more bills this year at 60 anti-gun bills than Virginia. And this is what will happen when people don't show up at the polls. This is what happened. Bloomberg got Virginia on the cheap because people didn't show up at the polls in an off-year election. Now, awesomely,
well, you say that, and I'm going to counter that with it was cheap in the regard that it only cost him somewhere between $16 and $60 million,
right,
between all his various liberal groups. Moms Against Action is one of the worst ones. The bad part is he works within several other liberal groups towards other objectives, but they still accomplish the same thing, because if somebody agrees with like a Green New Deal situation or an extreme ecological bill, then they're likely to agree with these gun bills because liberals liberal. And one of the, if you look on VPAP.org, they trace all the money that was contributed to the campaigns. If you look in the liberal sectors up in Northern Virginia, Moms Against Action was a very big contributor, but the bigger contributor was like Free Carbon Now, some group against fossil fuels. But in the top 4 campaign districts, there was over $500,000 put into each one. And these are districts, with very low populations. Hell, in the past, they probably had $30,000 spent on a campaign. All of a sudden this year, they had $500,000. So he literally bought the election, turned the House, the Senate, and they already had the governor mansion. So, I mean, it was really just a perfect storm. And a planned perfect storm, and that's what's going to spread across this country. I looked at Michigan today. Michigan has one of the highest militia counts in the state or in the country, but in their House and Senate, there's only a 4-seat difference between Republican and Democrat majority. He could go up there with $60 million and buy it.
Well, and to that point about Bloomberg, if you shift one state below to Ohio, Bloomberg's model is that he is opening offices in Ohio, and he has 16 field offices, 16, and has 90 staffers. Now, the difference is not only that a ton of people already early, he's not closing them after he loses the primaries. He's keeping them open through the general election, and his people will be working out of those offices for whatever he wants all the way through the general election. So the only way gun owners are going to keep anything is to show up in 2020, because if they don't, Bloomberg is already laying the groundwork. And that's just one state. He's doing the same thing in almost every state. And nobody can compete with it. Yes, nobody can compete with that money. Nobody. And the only way we're going to beat it is by sheer volume of voter turnout. That's it, because he's doing everything that, and nobody can spend that kind of money.
Yeah, let me say, we
be twofold. It's going to be money, and it's going to be showing up. And case in point, that group that I've started, which is what put me in touch with Andy, which landed me on the show, Virginia Rising. I started it. To give you a little history, I went back. Virginia started this 2A movement. The city that I live in, I started a page on Facebook for that, and we passed a good constitutional resolution on December 10th. I'm fortunate that I live in a pretty good conservative city, so it wasn't a big issue to get it done. But between the 10th and the 13th, in my mind, that wasn't enough. And I felt like I needed to do something more because there were so many bad bills coming out. And I started this page called Virginia Rising. So on December 13th, we started it. 6 weeks later, we had 125,000 people in it. That type of numbers in a state like Virginia, it's very good. It's not enough, but it's a great start. If all of those people were to contribute $20 each, you're talking several $1 million in addition to the passion that these gun laws brought out. And it's going to make people get to the polls. We have to have them registered. We have to have them turn out to vote. We have to have them contribute in order to combat that money from Bloomberg. It won't take as much, but at the same time, we've got to get good candidates. We've got to put them in the polls. We've got to finance their campaigns. We've got to go vote for them. It takes it all. It's multifaceted if we're going to win the
Yeah, so here in New Mexico, we're having the same thing. We're in session right now, same issues as everywhere else. Unfortunately, I guess New Mexico, we're small, so we mean a little bit less, I guess, per se, in the big picture. Now, I say that loosely because we feel just as important as any other state with these gun bills, right? Let me ask the hard question. So, I've never been a huge fan of gun rallies in the past for the exact reason like what we're seeing in Virginia. 100,000 plus people showed up. We fought. We gave our voices. And I will say we as gun people. You, Brad, Chris, Tim, went over there. We really showed out. We gave them everything that we could give, right? And just about every one of these damn bills passed. And that's what's frustrating for me because, we have a gun rally planned here in New Mexico this weekend. Is it this weekend? I believe January 31st. And unfortunately, I'm going to be out of state, but you get a little frustrated to think, what's your opinion, Chris? I want to get you involved on this about these gun rallies. I mean, I think we showed some strength, but it did nothing. So what do you think, Chris?
I really, I have a little bit different of opinion. And when it comes to this subject, I stay on the positive and bright outlook side. I think we went to Virginia, we rallied, we showed strength in numbers, and there's bills passing anyway. And I believe that those bills can be short-lived because I was having this discussion with a good friend of mine tonight. He's like a little brother with me. He doesn't know why we had to show up in military garb to make a showing. And I said, you just don't understand the issue. It's what they're doing in Virginia. They're passing bills to get rid of ordinary guns, to get rid of ordinary implements, tools that should be natural, non-threatening, should be just a tool to your everyday citizen. But the other side has preached their talking points to the point that they've made it scary. And we have to show up in numbers. We have to make this normal for people again, because it once was. And these gun laws, I believe in Virginia, we can make them short-lived. And the reason is we showed up together. It was positive. It was wonderful. And the friendliest, kindest people I've ever met in my life. I've been to a lot of gatherings, whether concerts, sporting events, city events, where there were thousands of people, and 100% of the people, 100% of the time, were just kind and wonderful. And we showed the world, strength in numbers, that we are normal, everyday citizens. These are our normal, everyday tools. And this isn't something that's mystical or that you should be afraid of. This is life for many of us. So we go to these rallies and we educate the public, and I try to tell people that tell me my one vote doesn't make a difference. My one opinion will never make a difference. And I say to them, your one might not make as big a difference, but if I can affect you to share your opinion and vote your opinion, and you can share with one of your relatives or one of your friends or multiple relatives and friends, and then get them to share. And I'm going to do more. I'm going to go affect other people myself. And it snowballs, and it takes time. It's not efficient. It's not something that we're doing this the hard way, but we're doing it, and we can't quit. We have to stay the course, keep fighting the good fight, and we have to keep on keeping on. In my business, being a firefighter, they call 911 and we have to solve the problem. And we have this old joke, the buck stops with us. They can't call, we can't call 912. There is no 912. We solve the problem. So here we are, Andy, Jeremy, Tim, Brad, we're solving the problem. We do it in numbers. We do it in strength. We do it a little at a time. We do it every day. And we just keep on, and we teach our kids, and we just keep fighting the good fight. And that's all you can do. And it will make a difference. You just have to believe it. And it is making a difference. It's making a difference in Virginia. I believe that. It's just hard to see it right now, but in a year, in 2 years, we're going to see it.
Good. I really hope so to see that. So, as I said, I've been in the negative side to where, these gun rallies don't work. And then I've kind of changed to where I'm on the fence to where, I see what you're saying. I think it's a great point. I also love to go to these rallies and see my friends, see people standing next to each other and fighting. And then Jeremy really helped me out because there was you see a lot of these comments about, the negativity of these gun rallies, and per se negativity, I'm saying basically they don't really work, right? And I saw Jeremy post something, and I want Jeremy to kind of share it, and I'm sure on that too, because that kind of pushed me over to the fence a little bit more to say, okay, I'm starting to see more and more the reason that these rallies actually work.
Yeah. So my and Tim, I know you had something, so we'll circle back to you on it. My opinion, I've kind of been in the same boat as far as my perception on the benefit of rallies. I think a poorly executed rally will do more harm than not having a rally, right? If you have a bunch of guys showing up and they're misbehaving or they're misrepresenting the Second Amendment community, and they're making overt threats against the government in a public forum, I think that does more harm than what we saw in Virginia. My personal opinion on the Virginia rally, kind of going into it, is kind of in that same vein that if we're relying on a rally or a group, a gathering to change the minds of politicians that have it in their mind to pass these constitutional infringements, we're missing the point altogether, right? That's not going to happen. It's not. There were 75,000 people that showed up, and before the rally was dismissed, these legislators in Virginia were saying it's not going to change our mind on what we're doing. However, what it did do for every single person at that rally was let them know that they had 75,000 other people that are willing to stand up next to them. And if we are in here in our own little think tank, right, outside of my group of friends, right, like my close group of friends and people that I associate with, it might be hard for me to realize how many other gun owners there are that are tired of having their rights infringed upon, right? So seeing a group of 75,000 people show up, travel from Texas, right, travel from across the country to stand next to their brothers and sisters in arms, that's the benefit of it, right? It's not going to change Bloomberg's opinion. It's not like those people said, holy cow, there's 75,000 people that think this is a very bad idea. let's maybe have a discussion with them. That's never going to happen, because it's not about saving lives, right? All of these anti-gun bills and laws they're kind of loosely veiled in this, oh, it's going to save lives. Then why aren't any of those people that want to pass anti-gun laws willing to have a conversation about how to actually save lives, right? Because we had the shooting, I believe it was in Miami, right? There was an outside gathering. There was a shooting. The police responded and returned fire within 20 seconds, and there were still dozens of people shot and injured. Right. So you have the cops there in 20 seconds. The government isn't able to save your life. So my opinion on rallies is kind of in the same vein. I think the benefit of it, I think more people need to kind of see that's the benefit. Right. And then I'd imagine that there were people out there getting folks registered to vote. Right. So, hey, this is what we need to do. Right. Having those conversations with other folks at the rally. Hey, you showing up? I see you here at Virginia, but I better see you at the polls. Like getting out there and actually voting. But I think for camaraderie and kind of relationship building and letting yourself know, kind of having that internal awareness that you're not in this thing alone. So maybe it is worth getting out there and going and voting, or vocalizing your thoughts on the anti-gun measures, worth it. And then at the other side, I think it lets our side see who the gun owner is, because I think the Second Amendment community has done a tremendous job. We have done a great job kind of excluding gun owners that don't look like your typical NRA member, right? And that's why it was so easy for the people on the anti-gun side to say this was a white supremacist rally. But if you look at it, how many of those white supremacists were standing next to African Americans, black guys, and Black Guns Matters and sweaters, right? Or the trans groups, right? We had this community of disenfranchised gun owners, right? This collection of different communities of disenfranchised gun owners that said, hey, look, I might not look like your NRA FUD, but I'm a gun owner and I'm tired of it too. So I think it let our side kind of see those other kind of subcultures within the Second Amendment community that we've done a great job ignoring and acting like they don't exist. So that's my kind of soapbox. Tim, I know we cut you off there.
No, it's all good. It's just, Brad said it, Chris said it, you're saying it. Look, eternal to keep liberty, we need eternal vigilance. It doesn't ever stop. And what both Brad and Chris were saying is, look, this needs to be a culture of involvement. We need to be a culture of engagement. And if we're not doing that, we will fail. They may be inalienable rights guaranteed by the Constitution, but if we aren't there to teach them, spread them, share them, we will lose. And this is what we're seeing, is that disengagement of people doing it. And to the rally perspective, exactly. I was with you guys in the Rallies Don't Matter camp until I went to the national rally in DC last fall, and I thought, you know what, a lot of people are going to show up. But what the point was that we have to A, start somewhere, and B, a rally isn't supposed to be a rah-rah cheer event and then it's all done. What it's supposed to be is a spark to show others that they can and must make a difference after the rally. When the rally is over, you're like, look, inspiring people said awesome things. That's usually what happens at rallies. But if you don't go home leaving that rally and saying, hey, you know what, I can run for office. I need to knock on doors. I need to vote. I need to, get involved, like Chris is saying, like Brad is saying. We need people to run for office. We need to put people to contribute. If we're not doing those things, we are failing our contribution.
Let me expand on some of this a little bit. Where we're going to win this is in the middle. A right-leaning Democrat gun owner is who we need to get. And I made a post on the Virginia Rising page and several other state pages the other day about it. We've got to be colorblind, which this rally was. When I said earlier, you walk by somebody, if you said, excuse me, there was no shoulder bumping, nobody gave you a mean look, they automatically stepped out the way and shook your hand or fist bumped or something, hit elbows, and it didn't matter if they were black or white or Asian or Indian, who they were. Everybody at that rally had the sense because of it. But we have got to be encompassing. It's got to be colorblind. It's got to be religious blind. It's got to be lifestyle blind. That's where we're going to win it. We're not going to win it with straight Republicans. We're not going to win it by isolating any certain group. That rally was not a skinhead, Nazi, militia. You can't put any type of synonym on it. It was a group of freedom and Constitution-loving Americans showing that they were tired of this type of legislation.
And that's one thing I hope to see. That's one thing I hope to see. In addition to the minorities that have shown up, which I thought that was amazing. All the Facebook posts and pictures and Instagram saying, "Oh, this is white supremacy, huh? How about these people?" That's the part I loved. We were on another podcast just watching the Save the Second earlier, and they were talking about NRA board members, who you should and who you shouldn't vote for. Go check them out, by the way. It's really good. But they were talking about one of the guys, and Tim, you probably do better than me on who this was, but he was a hunter. And they were like, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to vote for this Hunter guy. But I'm hoping that these rallies do another thing in addition to the minorities, that we start looking at all gun owners, the quote unquote FUDs, the ones that say, I am for the Second Amendment, or the hunters that say, you know what, I'm just a hunter. I don't need an AR-15. I'm hoping that these gun owners are paying attention and they're starting to really look to say, hey, you know what, we need to stand together a lot better than what we're doing. And I always say it, Moms Demand Action, they do an amazing job at sticking together and getting their points across and showing their emotions. And us as gun owners, we do a really bad job at that same thing because we just want to do what we want. I'm just a clay shooter. I'm just a hunter. So I don't care about the other stuff. And I hope that this rally has really brought some of that to light to where we can start coming together, and that's what we really need. And I totally agree that we're going to win this thing with those in the middle. New Mexico, again, for a great example for me, we're a majority blue state, but we still have a lot of blue collar Democrats that are going to vote for their guns. And I'm hoping to see those people really pay attention. Now, Chris, you mentioned
we really got a harness.
Agree totally. Chris, you mentioned that you had a gun group, advocacy group yourself as well. And how is that working out in your group? And what are you doing with that to kind of grow this?
Okay, so I'm a member of a gun forum, AR15.com. Last year, 2019, I became a lot more aware through the gun forum about Virginia. And I saw the threads, read, okay, Virginia's got problems. I never thought of Virginia as a state that was going to have gun problems. And I start reading this and it starts concerning me because I get concerned like that. So anyway, finally there's a thread with a call to action. I'm not trying to say I was first. I'm not trying to say I started anything, and I certainly didn't plan it. There were much more involved, educated people than me planning it. But in the thread, they're basically saying this is an all call. We need people to come to Virginia. And very quickly, I posted in Texas fashion, Davy Crockett fashion, you may all go to hell. I'm going to Virginia. And they said, what? I said, Davy Crockett came to Texas. I can go to Virginia. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but when you guys stand on lobby day, I'm standing with you. And maybe I was one of the people that helped build that, or maybe I was late, but it just seemed like I was early in posting, I'm from Texas, but I'm going to Virginia. So that led to organization, and we had some people step up. I'll just say some military folks that hold rank began to make some planning and execution stuff. We signed up. I'm a firefighter, paramedic. I've been a paramedic for over 25 years. I said, okay, if I'm going to Virginia, here's my name. I'm a paramedic. I don't know if you need me for that, but that's what I can do. And they said, yeah, we're going to have a medical sector. We're going to plan this. It'll be our group planning it, but it'll be for everybody there. They don't have to know what we're doing. They don't have to know that we're a group. We're just going to plan this right, and we're going to do it the right way. So we talked online. We talked at a dinner meeting the night before. We talked about, okay, we're good citizens. We're good gun owners. We are going to show the world that we can work well and play well with others. So I went with a med bag that I packed. It was all trauma stuff for just in case, not because I thought there would be violence, but because when you get 5, 10, 50,000 people together, they fall, they trip, they sprain ankles, they break legs, they whatever. And then factor in wild cards like Antifa or whoever else may show up to try to spoil our day. So I was medical sector of 9th and Bank, or at least one of them. I carried a med bag. I had a radio through organization that I could listen in to the rest of our group to find out what was going on. We had reinforcements. If somebody needed assistance, we were good citizens and we were going to help with the assistance. All I did all day long was I gave out one bottle of water to an elderly gentleman who asked for a bottle of water. And I told him, sir, I got help. If you need help, I can get you help. I can get you an ambulance. I can get you out of here. He goes, nope, I just need a rest and I need a bottle of water. Here's your bottle of water. I didn't doctor on anybody all day long, but we had the organization and on all 4 sides of the Capitol. We stood in formation the best that we can. I'm non-military, but we had military guys organizing us, putting us in formation, saying, just look the part of a good citizen, line up like this, and we're going to show people that we're the silent brigade. And that's what we were. We were the silent brigade. We had, I'm going to guess, having not seen all of us that were there, I'm going to guess total, we had 600 people representing from our gun forum.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on all 4 sides of the Capitol, and we had people like me and in other roles in each formation. Each formation had their medical people. Each formation had their command people. Each formation had their intelligence. And by intelligence, I mean what's going on the other side of the Capitol? What's going on here? Do we need to go help anybody? And we took it upon ourselves as a gun forum to be good citizens, to plan, to execute, and to do our part for the gun community, to do the right thing and stand with the kindest, nicest people I've ever met that are in Virginia. It was an amazing day, and it all came together beautifully.
And the really cool part about it is, unless you knew what you were looking for, you didn't see that. You might know guys and what they were doing. And Chris's group was, I think, the biggest one, but there were several others too, that were a little more loosely, but probably not saying, I can't know, active duty military groups that had time off or were doing that, and also had wandering medics, and they were all just there as citizens. But there was a lot of support from many sectors of the United States. People came from far away, Hawaii.
Training, and one of our group had a full backpack. I mean, we could have handled just about any, serious injury if needed. Not for any reason other than in case. I mean, I bet there were 150,000 guns conservatively on those in that area that day, and there was not a misfire. There was nothing.
Yeah, a million rounds of ammo were walking around the Capitol building, not a thing happened.
Yep, absolutely.
So that brings me to my second question. Is the other thing is open carrying at these rallies, right? So we have guys that just carry their we've seen ARs, we've seen 50 cal Barretts, which was kind of cool, to be honest with you. And I've been always the guy that says, hey guys, show up in a nice suit, or show up in your business attire, show up in your military uniform, whatever it may be that you do, but leave the battle rattle at home. And I can tell you 1,000 times I've gotten into conflict with other gun owners to say, well, it's my right to carry, yada, yada, yada. And again, to the point where I'm like, why do I even care? Why do I even fight about this stuff? Why do I tell people not to? The problem is exactly what happened to Virginia just happened in New Mexico. Not quite as bad yet. Virginia, of course, they banned firearms. They called this state of emergency. They put up fencing. We just had a release from our state capitol that Tuesday, lobby day, is going to be no firearms allowed in our roundhouse, which is the first time. And I can tell you, we had some Republicans on the last session. They came out and said, hey guys, please stop doing this. Please stop bringing your rifles into the roundhouse. We get it. We get that you're right. But what you're going to do is you're going to end up getting firearms banned from our roundhouse. And now me, as a representative that's actually fighting for you, is not going to be able to carry my own concealed handgun into the roundhouse. And sure enough, this just happened. We just got the release today that you can no longer carry. So what do you guys think about that? What is your opinions? Start with Brad, and let's move into Tim and Chris. Go ahead, Brad.
Do you have a Democrat majority in the state house?
We do. We are almost 100% Democratic majority. Pretty darn close.
Good gracious! Wow. Okay. Prior to the rally in Virginia, I was of the impression that if you wanted to maybe conceal carry or open carry a pistol or something, that was fine. Don't carry the long guns. We have always been allowed to carry into our state house, into everywhere in the state house except the balcony of the Senate. And this year they stopped that. But after having seen that rally, it was cool. There were guys with every manner. There were some people who had 3 or 4 or 5 guns on them. For the rally purpose, and especially given the state of emergency and the fencing situation and just how they handled it, when I walked through that crowd, I was proud that there were guys there in battle rattle. It didn't hurt a darn thing. It showed that we were serious. It showed that we were in control. It showed that we could handle having guns there. I mean, I think more good came of it than bad. But in your case, what you said is exactly right. It ultimately ended up in guns being banned. And it's not the gun, it's the politician. We have got to turn. We've got to start at the lowest level. We got to work within the city councils, within the counties. We've got to get the boards elected correctly. We got to get 2A resolutions passed. We got to get state resolutions passed. Missouri is actually right now working on a bill statewide that's going to make Missouri as a whole a Second Amendment state. They're going to embrace and protect the Second Amendment. I think any state that currently should pass that. I think any state that can't should do it county by county until we get the entire state to do it. And hopefully in doing so, we begin getting people in the city and county boards of supervisors, city councils, whatever form of government they function under. That's where it starts. It starts at the bottom and works its way up. A lot of these city councilors end up saying, I like politics. I'm going to move up to the state house. I'm going to move up to Washington, whatever. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's not going to change in a year, even in Virginia. In 2021, I feel comfortable and confident that we're going to change the Virginia House of Delegates back red. But we can't vote on the Senate for 4 more years. So,
let's
stop anything from happening, but we probably can't turn anything, or repeal anything. So,
for sure,
for 5 or 6 years.
I definitely hope so too. That's always our hope. We have one of our senators leaving this year, Tom Udall. We're really hoping for a good, solid candidate that's going to get in there. That's Republican. Now, one of those discussions that I had with the open carriers, one of the guys said, "Well, I want to carry my gun so the cameras can see me," and my response was, "Okay, well, let's think about the media. How does that benefit you? How does that benefit me?" And the conversation kind of stopped. So, Chris, what do you think about the subject?
Well, I think your predicament is a bit different. Your state is a lot more heavily Democratic liberal than Virginia is. I think in Virginia it was a special circumstance due to the bills that they were filing. Give me your semi-automatics. Since you're going to enact sanctuary cities. I'm going to make it a felony for Leos not to enforce the law. I'm going to make it a felony for your neighbors to not turn you in. And they're going full on fascism. So we needed some eloquent people in suits to talk intelligently and to dialogue with those representatives who were probably never going to listen to begin with. And then we needed some people to show up and display. And there were various forms of display, from belt holsters with a Glock 17 or a 19 to a guy like me. I've never open carried a day in my life. I totally agree with it, because I always think more freedom is better than less freedom. But I conceal carry everywhere I go. But on this day in Virginia, I showed up in a plate carrier with mag pouches, a battle belt. I carried my Glock 20 10 millimeter on my hip with 5 pistol mag reloads. I carried AR-15 slung with 3 reloads on my chest, my plate carrier, and on top of all of it, I had on a Carhartt jacket because I was cold. And people needed to see. People needed to see that people with scary guns, scary black guns, mine happens to be OD green, but that's okay. They needed to see that we're normal and we're not scary, and we're just you. We're just normal people. It's not the tool, it's the person, and most of the people are just normal. And a lot of us showed up like that, and that particular event called for a lot of us to do that. I haven't studied the New Mexico situation enough to speak intelligently on it, but I understand your predicament. Like you say, people open carrying, it went a different direction than you would have planned. Ultimately, it is the fascism within the politician, and we have a lot, and we have one big money bag fascist that's paying people to think his way, and it's one person at a time, and it's a domino effect, and you have to push dominoes down in every direction, and you have to have that ripple effect. And we have to affect as many people as possible. That's why I'm here with you guys tonight. That's what I've been doing with my life recently, and that's what I want to do more with my life is to affect as many people as I can. We're normal. We're Second Amendment, and there's nothing wrong with us.
They in Virginia have as Brad and Chris, who both call themselves normal average guys. The mistake made in Virginia by the politicians was they awoke the average man. The average man is now it. And now the average man, as I tell Chris on another forum, that is the most powerful thing in politics, when you awaken the average man. If you look at Brad's group online, they're like it's a huge group, and people are getting engaged. They're realizing they have to be involved. That is the thing. And this rally may not have been for as much for Virginia as we would have liked. And clearly it was there. And we're glad to see Virginia doing this. And I do believe that both Brad and Chris have said this can be turned around. But this rally was as much for Virginia as for the rest of the Republic. People came because they said, you know what? They're doing something in Virginia. Like Chris got in his car and drove with 2 guys across the United States to go be there. That is the true thing. The true takeaway from this is, folks, you want to keep the Republic? Cool. Tag, we're now it. The average guy has woken up. Chris believes he can do something, which is awesome, because he is talking and he is pollinating this. Brad is reaching out to everyone in Virginia now to get this stuff done. And he's one of hundreds, if not tens of thousands of people actively engaged in politics. VCDL just posted a couple of minutes ago that they've now had their 137th city or county reach sanctuary status. Clearly, Virginia stands, and they showed the rest of the nation. Someone jokingly said, if you look at the Virginia flag, it's got a tyrant and it says Latin on it. And basically what the Virginia did was teach the rest of the nation to speak Latin. Stand up onto tyrants. It's not exactly what it says, but that's in my mind, the big takeaway here. Wake up. And I believe they've been woken.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back to the battle rattle discussion briefly. I think in the Virginia rally, it was absolutely necessary. And I saw a day before, I think it was VCD. There was a group, an advocacy group that said, everybody brings their guns. Nobody go inside the fenced off area, just, as a bigger and better statement. At the year before last, or I believe it was last year, we had went down there. We went up to Santa Fe. Quite a few folks from our side showed up. They rolled out the red carpet for Moms Demand Action. They were allowed to go into the meeting room first and pick their seats and take 3/4 of the room over. They were allowed leniencies and that kind of bordered on, hey, that technically is against the rules. And then they started talking about, not hearing us at all. And I was like, if that's the game you want to play, then yeah, everybody suit up, battle rattle time. Let's go up there and really just show these people, that it's not, we will put on the friendly face, right? And we'll be polite and kind to you and all that stuff. But the disrespect needs to stop, right? I think our side does a tremendous job. We do a great job showing outwardly respect to folks. And we typically don't strike first, right? We will be pushed around a good bit before we say enough is enough, right? Stop treading on me, type of deal. I think the problem with smaller rallies like what we have up in Santa Fe and folks showing up in battle rally is it makes it really easy for middle ground people to disassociate themselves with our side, right? So if we don't have people showing up dressed normally, right, and talking about the pro-gun, the Second Amendment and what it's intended for, and how these anti-gun bills really aren't going to do what they're trying to trick you into think they're going to do, right? Having that normal average Joe looking person, without that person having that conversation, it's a super convenient cop-out to disassociate yourself with that individual altogether. And then no matter what you say, you're not going to get through to them. Right. So I think it's a time and a place and proper planning. Right. Virginia, hell yeah, everybody show up in battle rattle, bring the 50. Right. I don't think I think what the Virginia rally did do, though, is now battle rattle isn't battle rattle unless you're showing up with the Barrett. Right. Like what's next? You're going to bring the Mongoose. I think that's the next level for battle rattle.
I think that might be called escalation. Chris, weren't they parking dump trucks at the end of and Brad, did you see them? They parked dump trucks at key intersections downtown to prevent any big vehicles, at least slow them down.
Oh yeah.
They had snow plows in the parking garages too that were hidden.
Yep.
I wouldn't have been mad at a tank there. I'm not gonna lie.
They were prepared for bad.
9 yards. That was overkill from a state perspective.
What was that, Brad? I think we missed it.
Even having the snipers on the roof and everything, it was overkill. They were loaded for bear. They were anticipating, an issue, and thankfully nothing happened. But that's what made me so worried. My biggest concern going into that day was planted infiltrators, within our group acting out, creating an issue that could have easily spread out of control. Luckily that didn't happen. We had a lot riding on that day. It really could have gone bad. Unfortunately, nothing did. But
my gas mask.
We were talking on like New Mexico. I just looked after you said that the Senate is the Senate in New Mexico, 42 total seats. Right now, the breakdown of it's 26 Democrats, 16 Republican. You need 21 to tie it, 22 for a majority. So you're 5 seats away in the Senate in New Mexico from being able to actually stop stuff. That's not insurmountable. But it takes an organized serious campaign to do it. Every state in the union just about has something like that. This Virginia Rising page, and one of y'all mentioned the numbers, and I mean, I'm tickled death with it. I have a page in every state, every single state, the name and Rising. New Mexico, Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, Kansas, whatever. Right now we're closing in on 250,000 people total nationwide. We need 50 million people nationwide. But county by county, city by city, state by state is how we're going to win this. If we can get these seats in Mexico to turn, then we send to DC are going to turn, and that's when we're going to start to see real change coming out. It starts with these Republican committee meetings, city councils, town councils, embracing the middle of the road people. It's multifaceted, and we've got to do it all. The rallies are great. The big rallies, I think, especially are great. The one you mentioned about in DC, and I didn't go, and I'm 2 hours away from it. I should have been there, but
we'll see you next year then.
That's the type of mentality everybody's got to get.
So I want to circle back just real quick. Earlier we were talking about the average person and how they made us out to be Nazis and stuff. Okay. Real quickly. I'm a Southern Baptist. I've served on committees. I've served as a deacon in my church, and my morality is mine. But the people that I stood with on this day in Virginia, no disrespect to anyone, I stood with other whites, Asians, Hispanics, blacks. I stood with a trans person. I stood with gays. I stood with heterosexuals. I stood with a lot of women. I stood with old people. I stood with young people. I stood with average people. And we're all endowed with rights by our Creator. Your Creator is yours. Mine is mine. I stood with average people that day, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, it was really impressive to see. I'm not too surprised by the outcome. You know, I wasn't surprised that there wasn't violence. I guess I was a little bit surprised that there weren't infiltrators, and I know that sounds very conspiracy theory minded, and I do kind of lead with conspiracy theories. But we've seen it before. They've been kind of called out on it and leaked video footage of meetings and whatnot. So I'm a little bit surprised that there weren't infiltrators in there trying to stir the pot and cause a ruckus. It might have been the over 1 million rounds of ammo that were there that day that dissuaded those folks from doing it, and maybe they're not as convicted in their beliefs as they would like to be told they are. I'm not surprised that the Virginia legislators that they basically said, F you guys, we really don't care, we're going to do what we're going to do regardless, because that's what power hungry people do, right? Like, they don't care about serving their constituents, and we can see it on both sides of the aisle. So it's not a Democrat or Republican thing, it's a power thing. And I'd be remiss if we were to sit here and say that there aren't good Democratic politicians, right? Just like there are Republican politicians that are not good politicians and don't really care about their constituents. So it's not a problem that plagues the Democrats only. I think what we see here is, with the Second Amendment being as fundamental and important as it is, and the attacks, the nonstop attacks that we see on the Second Amendment, it's the end game, right? It's 100% about control and about power. And I think Virginia is a great example of that, right? Because you have all of these people, and you don't want a conversation. You're not willing to budge an inch. Like, you're not willing to budge. You're going to sit here and say that if a gun can have a magazine that has more, you have no idea what you're talking about, and you're still ignorant enough to think that you need to be legislating these tools that people save their lives with on a daily basis. It's not about saving lives. It's not about anything other than power and control. And we're seeing it happen. New Mexico is a testing ground, because it doesn't take much to get in here and slowly shift the culture to now we need these individuals in office, and these individuals are going to vote this way. And before you know it, these common sense gun laws lead to further laws that ultimately only further disenfranchise and harm the people in our country that have the least amount of voice, right? Like, it's not like this stuff doesn't affect them. They're like, guns are bad, but I need 5 people around me with all the guns on them. So it was great to see, right? It was great to see. I'm glad that y'all represented our community as well as you did. No surprise though, right? Because you had 75,000 people there that understand that people are people. I don't care what you do, as long as you don't affect me. I really don't have a problem with it, right? An armed society is a polite society, truly and wholly.
Yeah, really quick, the reason why I think that the Antifa or whatever didn't show up, have you guys watched the videos where those dudes have just gotten their asses kicked everywhere they try to go? I think that's probably why they don't go anymore. And I think that's going to fade just because those dudes can't fight. That's what I
Get
think.
off the bus in Richmond, I don't know.
Honestly, in all seriousness, I spoke to Antifa before our rally for about 2 weeks and told him, I said, look, we're not looking to have an issue with y'all. We just want to go up there and argue about these gun bills. Unanimous answer. And I was dealing with a local Antifa chapter, had 3,500 members. They absolutely were as against gun control as we were. They had received so many threats. They said they were considering going to an off-site venue. And I think they did, because I didn't see them at the rally. But they said, no, our problem is with racist and skinheads and Nazis and things like that. But no, we're as against gun control as you are. And that's a prime example of where we need to, be inclusive with it. I mean, if they want trouble, they can certainly find it. But if they want to avoid it, then let's help them do so. In the hotel that morning, I stayed in the hotel right there around the corner from the rally, and group of probably 8 big black guys in the lobby that morning. And I walked up to them and introduced myself, told them who I was, what we were there for. I said, I'm guessing y'all are here for the rally, and none of them answered. And I said, all right, just want to know, we're up here to protest, these gun laws, nothing personal towards you or any group. And one of the guys shook my hand. He said, yeah, we're not here for any trouble either. And sure enough, in one of the interviews, I saw one of the guys. He was from Black Lives Matter chapter, I believe it was 575, and they were up there protesting the same thing we were. So we've got to watch out and not make an enemy out of somebody that maybe isn't an enemy, and give them an opportunity, and make sure that we're not fighting an enemy that doesn't exist.
We have a listener comment from George. He said he thinks the groups rely on the internet too much to try and get people together for gun rallies. He's from Kansas and talked to quite a few folks about gun rallies that are going on, and most people don't know about them because they're not well advertised other than the internet. And it's something that doesn't appeal to a lot of people to get the information out to them. So what do you guys think? I guess let's talk about some things that the VC, that some of the things that were executed well that led to such a great turnout. Was it things on our side that we did, or was it just the extreme gun control measures that were being, shoved down their throats? And what are some things that we can do better to increase the turnout at these positive rallies?
You need to hit it several ways. I mean, and I know lots of people in Kansas in the Second Amendment movement, and it costs money to communicate with people almost every way but the internet. So what VCDL does really well is you can subscribe to an email. They also run Facebook pages. You have to seek that stuff out. I understand it can be a bit frustrating. Per the question is I didn't know. You're going to have to go searching for it because these groups simply don't have money to do mailings anymore. I'm a life member of KSRA. I get it. I get their mailings and their catalog and their magazine, and it's great. But the best way, which is frustrating, is Facebook. It is finding an email. Because I mean, I get VCDL emails every single day, and I mean, I'm in the Second Amendment business, kind of. So I digest this stuff, but that is where we have to find it. And what Chris did, what I did, what Brad did is took it from the internet and then realized we needed to make it personal. So we can all be clickivists, you know, sitting at our keyboards, doing our thing, getting all mad and upset. That's cool. That's a great place to start, but you've got to take it beyond the keyboard. Chris got in his car. Brad's probably been driving all over doing it. It's a great way to communicate initially, but we have to make it personal. And that's where you're going to do it. So in Kansas, he needs to find some people who are like-minded. And I know them. My co-host on my show is from Kansas, and she's very active in the Second Amendment community, but she has to travel to do that. So it's going to take that. So the internet's the spark, but you're going to have to go find it, because it's just, there's no money in sending out mailers. So sign up for the email, stalk the Facebook groups, and then go find 2 or 3 people in your state who you believe are doing a good job and start making friends.
So
just a quick antidote to that. We had the rally on Monday. On Wednesday and Thursday, I actually went up there, dressed up in a coat and tie, and went and talked to the lawmakers. Wednesday, I went to speak to one lawmaker. His secretary blew me off. Thursday, I went back. She tried the same thing, even though he was right there in his office. And I said, all right. And I walked down the hall about 10 yards, sat down in a chair, put a post on Facebook with his phone number at his office on it, said on to our Virginia Rising page. I said, all right, guys, ring the phone off the hook. And about 10 minutes later, that phone started ringing. She never stopped the rest of the day. Every single time I walked by her, she was either on the phone or the phone was ringing and she was getting ready to answer it. I don't think that makes a big deal, but it sure made me feel good, because, you know, she was just ignoring me. And instead she had to earn it the rest of that day, and it mattered. People everywhere can do something. You know, even the ones that are immobile, maybe can't get out of the house, they can send the emails, they can make the phone calls. The rest of us that are able can physically be there in person and, you know, talking the talk.
So I consider myself the spark. I'm connected in many ways on the internet. I get the VCDL mailings. I joined them last year. I'm in Texas. I joined the Virginia Citizens Defense League. I'm a member of several organizations. I get emails. I read the internet. But it's like I said earlier, there's a line of dominoes each direction around me, north, south, east, and west. And it's my job to push that first domino over each direction every day, every week, every month. I'm connected, and maybe not as connected as you guys. I'm not trying to say that I'm as hip as anybody, but I am. I try to stay connected. And the bottom line is, I take that to the people I know in as many facets of life as I possibly can. At work, when somebody wants a gun, when somebody wants to buy a gun, I get the phone call. I am the guy. What do you think about this? What should I do here? Where can I go to get some training? And I field those phone calls, those emails, those interactions all the time, because I am connected with the internet about Second Amendment issues. I have to be the spark. I have to push the dominoes in every direction, and that's what I try to do. And if I can get one more person to subscribe to these organizations and become a new spark, we just have to keep trying. And it's not efficient, but we just have to keep going. We got to do it. And I'm an average guy. That's what I'm doing now. I didn't always do it, but for the past few years, that's what I'm doing.
I don't know. When I was a director, you kept me honest. You'd call me and give me your input. So you doing your part, if we all did a little bit, there wouldn't be so much lifting. And you have been the spark. The fact is that you continue to be a spark. I think that, you underestimating yourself is probably awesome, because you think, well, I could do more. I'm going to be more involved. Cool. Because, you're affecting more people daily. And that is the best part about that, is that your involvement, and and Brad's involvement and all of us realized, you know what, I could probably do a little more. I could probably do a little better. That is the culture change that we need.
Well, you know that I just got pissed.
Yep.
I mean, these laws were so outrageous, and that's what the spark was. I've always been one to talk about it and hated it, and got frustrated whenever I saw other states doing these laws, and then suddenly here it is in Virginia, and I never thought it'd be there, but that was the primer that made me do something. And
that was my primer to get started too.
Better, you can do something.
Brother, I'm in Texas, and I got pissed for Virginia.
Yep.
It was enough to do it. And that partly too is what made that rally turn out like it was. There were people from so many states there. I couldn't begin to tell you how many people I met from out of state. And the news coverage, because they were so outrageous, I think made that spread more than normal. I've said it, it's been my storyline right along, is they opened the whole playbook. If they had gone 2 or 3 or 5% a year, they would have gotten it all in 20 years. But they didn't. They tried to get it all at once. And that was significant. That made it newsworthy, and that made the word spread. And I think that's what got people there.
So I hopped in the car. There were 3 of us, and we drove to Virginia. And you might think Chris got in the car with his 2 best friends, and they drove. What happened was a guy on the forum messaged me, because he doesn't post a lot in public, and said, "Hey, what are your thoughts on driving to Virginia? I see that you're going." I didn't know the guy. The other guy, I went to high school with him, and we've seen each other a dozen times in 30 years, and we still know each other, and we Facebook connect. But the bottom line is, he said, "I'm pissed for Virginia, and I want to go too." So you had 3 guys
on a 15-hour road trip.
3 guys that weren't very connected together, that got in the car and got to know each other better, and were all average guys. Nobody was an axe murderer. Nobody was a druggie. We got together, and we were average, and we found common ground, and we listened to each other's music, and we put up with each other 19 hours on the road each way so that we could come help Virginia. And that's a spark.
So you didn't take anybody from New Mexico is what it sounds like. No murderers, no.
Hey, brother, if it's possible, I'll come stand with you in New Mexico. I got a weird schedule with the fireman gig, but if I can get the time off and I know your schedule, we can't let the sparks burn out. So I'd be happy and honored to come stand with you in New Mexico if it's at all possible.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
One thing that was cool with Virginia, both Michigan and Mississippi had solidarity rallies on the same day at their state house. And I never saw a number from Mississippi, but Michigan, last I saw, 785 people said they were going to attend. That was pretty cool. I understand that, you might not be able to jump in the car and go cross country, but drive an hour to your state house and show the solidarity. And, you can do that in Texas for New Mexico just like I could in Virginia.
My state house is 4 hours away, but it's all good.
Hey, what part of Texas are you from, Chris?
Texas a little bigger than Virginia.
I live smack dab halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth.
Okay.
Gotcha.
My brother-in-law's a firefighter in Belmead. Down there in Waco.
Yeah.
So West Texas, they had that big explosion a couple of years ago. Awesome. Well, I know you guys are a couple of y'all are a couple of hours ahead of us. So I'd love to get you the rest of the evening back before it's tomorrow. We definitely appreciate you guys jumping on. Brad, Chris, Tim, you guys have any parting thoughts or words of advice for our listeners?
The only thing I would say is, regardless what state you're in, on Facebook, look up whatever the name of your state is and Rising, RISING, and join the group, spread the word. Whatever group you're in, ultimately, we're all going to end up at the same place, hopefully. The more connected we can all be, the better it's going to be. We've got to stop it. it's not going to get better on its own. We've got to all get together and make a stand. And I told my kids forever that I didn't think it was going to happen in my lifetime, but I thought in their lifetime there was going to be, some form of correction in this country. And now I'm not so sure. I mean, it's getting closer and closer, and the more radical these laws get, the worse it's getting. And this is my effort at trying to stop that. So it's going to take all of us, and we got to work and work and work. So just keep on it, guys.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
I say, be nice, be polite, be average, and be a spark.
Exactly what these guys said. Everyone has a beginning in politics. And I had mine in 2013, and I really haven't stopped since. Don't stop. But remember that everyone has a beginning. You don't necessarily know what you're doing, but what you do know you're doing is standing up for your rights, and you're doing the right thing. And that's never wrong. And the fact that you maybe your listeners have probably some have been convinced that their vote doesn't matter, that they don't matter, that their rights don't matter, that one more person showing up at the Capitol won't matter. You're wrong. Don't fall for it. They want you to fall for it. They want you to have a busy life. We can't always be everywhere. My wife definitely gets mad at me for trying, but don't forget, it's okay to be new to this. It's okay to engage now. People, the people who are doing it wrong are pointing at you saying, where were you before? No, the right answer is, I'm glad to have you. Let's get this done, brother or sister. I don't care what flag you fly, as long as it's under the Constitution of the United States, what you may look like, what your race, gender, creed, don't care. If you are a believer in the Constitution, you now can start. This can be your beginning. So go do it.
Awesome. I love it. And if people wanted to listen to you on more podcasts, Tim, where might they turn?
ToTheRepublic.us is the website, with my co-host Rebecca Schmoy from 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, and Tim Knight, the kind of washed up NRA board member who is not really stopped doing what I do. I just no longer work directly for the members of the NRA, but thankfully I still work for all gun owners. So they kind of got a twofer out of me, and I'm just an example. I'm nobody special. I meet people like Chris, and I've met Chris actually several times. And I know if I called him, he'd help me out, or if I have a question. And that's the cool part. It's about relationships. I'm in the relationship business. I mean, I know everyone but Brad, and Brad may be stuck with me now too. It's just, it's true, Brad. I've come to Virginia all the time. So this is how we do it. It's forming these relationships and doing this together. And that's what my show is about people making a difference and being examples.
That's awesome. And you guys are all special. I think you're able to do more work now that you have no longer, since you, I don't know if you want to get into it or not, but with that, but for those of you guys that don't know Tim Knight, follow him. Definitely check out his podcast. He is one of the hardest working advocates for the Second Amendment and for gun owner rights. This dude is always on the road traveling, fighting the good fight, and getting out there and spreading his knowledge with anybody who seeks it out. So definitely appreciate everything that you do. Andy, you have any parting thoughts for our guys?
I just want to thank everybody for coming on the show and taking the time to voice your opinions and give us the education. I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm really new to the politics thing as of maybe 3 years ago or so, and I'm still learning a lot. And these types of discussion is what really gives me the education that I can use and share with the others. And I really like what Chris said. Let's be average. Let's create a spark. Let's get more people here. This whole Virginia situation, it's a bad day, but on the end of it, I think it woke some people up, as we've talked about. So I'm very kind of interested in seeing what happens, and I hope that this fire just continues to grow to where we do get these groups that are separate, blacks, whites, Asians, gays, straight, Christians, whatever you are. Come out and let's fight. So I really like that. So thank you guys for hopping on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. We appreciate everybody jumping on. Remember, it's your life. It's your safety and protection. It's your responsibility. Stay safe, and we'll see y'all next week.
Great. Thank